Welcome to Chapter 2, Section 1. And Chapter 2 is going to be all about Ruby, all about the actual programming language. We're going to take a break from Ruby on Rails for a bit and just learn a little bit of Ruby itself. Like I said in the past chapter, you don't need to have a solid foundation in Ruby to start learning Ruby on Rails. And actually, if you don't know any up to this point, that's absolutely fine. I'm just going to show you in Chapter 2 the basics of Ruby and just what you need to know in order to build a web application using Rails. So a little bit of history on Ruby. It was created by a Japanese man named Yukihiro Matsumoto, and he's better known as Matz, M-A-T-Z, and he created Ruby in 1993. And it wasn't released until it was released to the public in 1995. And many developers say that Ruby is one of the most expressive and concise programming languages. Matz, he had a different approach when he created Ruby than most programming language developers. It was created for productivity and simplicity, and he created it using having the programmer in mind. It was created for programmers by programmers. So, and he eliminated a lot of the basically the crap work that you have to do when you're building a program. What he did was he took the best aspects of all the languages he was using in that time and kind of meshed them all together and called it Ruby. You know, he took certain elements from Java and a lot of elements from Smalltalk and just different languages, different parts from different languages. So some other Ruby facts. Ruby doesn't need to be compiled like most other languages like C, C++, Java. Usually you'd have to have an IDE that would run them through a compiler, and we would use more resources. So Ruby doesn't have to be compiled. It's just read just how it is, how it's written. So that's a really good plus to Ruby. It's relatively easy to learn. It's relatively easy. If you look at other programming languages and then look at Ruby, it's easier. I don't like to say that anything's easy. Any programming languages are that simple. It definitely does take a lot of work to learn any kind of programming languages. Ruby is pure object orientated. In Ruby, everything is an object, and I mean everything. Numbers, booleans are all treated as objects. But don't let that fool you. I'll go into this on the next slide actually, but Ruby is a multi-paradigm language, so even though it's object-oriented, it also includes other types of paradigms, functional and whatever. The syntax is similar to Perl and Python. If you know any Perl or any Python, then this should be easier for you to learn. And Ruby is used for, obviously it's used for web applications. That's what this series is about. Ruby on Rails is strictly for web applications, but Ruby itself can also be used for other types of desktop applications, 2D games, and some other stuff. It's not as powerful as using something like Java, but you can do other things with it. And it's really fun to use. So like I said, Ruby is a multi-paradigm language. It is an object-oriented language, but can utilize multiple types of paradigms for different problems. Ruby, it can also be functional and imperative, if you know anything about different kinds of programming paradigms. And everything in Ruby is treated as an object. And that's a really important thing to understand when programming with Ruby. Everything's an object, and objects have methods. Numbers, strings, booleans, statements, methods, methods of functions, which I'll be using interchangeably. Ruby likes to define functions as methods. I might say either one, so basically they're the same thing. And these methods, here's an example. We have 5. This is the syntax to call a method from an object. So the object here is 5 and the method is times, and this particular method will print something out 5 times or do whatever we want 5 times. Now here we have a string hello, and the function, the method is reverse, which will just reverse the spelling of hello. And here we have the string hello again with the length method, which will give us the length of the word. So this would be 5. Hello.length would be the same as 5. Okay, let's move on. Syntax of Ruby. As I said earlier, it's similar to Perl and Python. Keywords in Ruby signal class and method definition. And there are some pretty prominent differences from Ruby and most other languages. One of them is that when you declare a method, you don't have to use, you can't use curly braces like you would in most other languages. Instead, you use the keyword def, D-E-F, for define, and then the method name, and then all the stuff in between, and then at the end you wouldn't have a closing curly brace, you'd have end, the text END. So it takes a little bit of getting used to, but it's not bad. Another thing is that you don't need to have a semicolon on the end of your statements. Ruby uses a line break to know that that's the end of the statement. But you can use semicolons, which I do, and that's what I would really recommend if you're working in other programming languages as well, because it doesn't hurt, and it's not a lot of work, so why not do it? And the next thing, Ruby takes uppercase variables and treats them as constants. So keep your variables lowercase unless you want it to be a value that doesn't change. And let's see, you get back what you put in terms of data types. What that means is if you have, say you have 7 divided by 3, and you know that the answer to that is 2.3, but you're not going to get that. You'll get 2 because whatever you put in is what you get back, and what you put in was an integer, 2 integers, so that's what you get back. If you want to have a float back, then that's what you got to put in. You'd have to put 7.0 divided by 3.0, and then you'd get 2.3. So whatever you put in is what you get back. Let's see, Ruby keeps all instance variable private to the class. The $ and the @ are not thought of as data types but scope resolution. So when we declare a variable, we don't have any kind of symbol or character on the front of it. If we do have a $ in front of it, a $, yeah, that's what it's called, then that usually means that it's a global variable. So only global variables would have that. Let's see, let's move on, and that looks like that's it. So in the next video I will be showing you more actual programming. We're going to use a program called Ruby Installer, and that'll give us another program called Interactive Ruby, which is a command line interface that we can run Ruby code in. So I'll see you in that video.